please. All right.
No, you
No,
don't have to
sir.
sit.
Yeah, you can,
We don't have to
bring your
sit.
chair
We're
up. You
standing.
can-
We're
yeah.
pretty laid back.
We're just saying you can join us
Just-
if you don't
just-
want
yeah,
to sit
if you
way
wanna-
back.
Oh, I'm okay back here. You guys can hear me.
Yeah, just
Keep
speak
your
so that
distance.
it'll carry on the tape. too.
Sure. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's AJ Bruno. I moved to Deerfield about 3.5, 4 years ago. I live on off of Hartford Brook Road in that development. Before there, I've lived in like Londonderry, Lee. I've lived in New Hampshire about 6 years. My background is I used to work on ships for the government all over the world, a lot of humanitarian work. My background is like marine science, so all my undergraduate studies are oceanography, meteorology, astronomy, that kind of stuff. I just finished that up. I'm back here for the foreseeable future. I'm not going to be going back out. I'm actually starting in the spring. It's like a 15-month program at UNH to get my master's in accounting. I'm going to transfer to more of the business background, take my experiences working on ships and do something more in the finance and business field. I've traveled a lot, been in a lot of national parks, state parks, here and all over the world, and I'm a big fan of conservation, done a lot of different stuff overseas through humanitarian work, some conservation stuff in kind of conjunction with our government and other governments and stuff like that. So want to be able to do that locally since I'll be locally, and since I'm going to be here more consistently, I'm looking for ways I can lend whatever skills I have that are useful to whomever deems them useful to help out. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for your interest.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we thought if you just wanted to come to a couple of meetings and see what we're up to and,
Definitely.
If it appeals to you,
yeah.
yeah.
so, yeah, we'll start. We don't have any other visitors tonight, so we'll just go through our regular agenda. And I'll just go in the order that Judy has it here.
And I would just say, if you have questions as we go about like the projects and stuff we're gonna reference, just throw them out there.
We'll try to give enough introduction that at least follow along.
I've been reading
hopefully.
through the past couple meetings, like notes and stuff like that, just kind of looking through, for this meeting's agenda. I've just read through that a couple times, just trying to catch up, see what you guys are up to. So
Well, I know when I started, it took me several years to
I'm like,
figure out what the heck was going
I'm
on.
50% there, yeah, so.
Okay, so I think all of you know that we are working with Sylvia Von Olaf to revise the wetlands ordinance, to bring it up to date. And Haley and I attended a planning board meeting, I guess, a month or so ago, and we went through the changes that we proposed, and then Haley went to a meeting last week.
Mhm.
Do you want to give just a quick update or overview of where we're at?
Yeah, so between that first meeting and this past meeting, we made some additional edits based on the initial feedback that we received. One was, I say the most significant one was removing the suggested addition for 1 acre of contiguous upland being required on new lots in Deerfield. That was a suggestion Sylvia had made initially, and I think we felt it came more from a planning perspective as opposed to a conservation and ecological perspective, which is met by the requirement we'd be adding for the 100-foot area beyond a delineated wetland being required in the overlay district.
What was the big
Does that make
objection to the 1 acre?
They thought it was restrictive and prohibitive for people who would be looking to potentially build, that it would make the buildable area of some potential lots extremely small, and so it would require larger lots, basically.
Well, it's a 3 acre.
It's a 3 acre minimum, but currently you can have, and this is actually, I was just saying to Sarita, I can't quite recall how the current requirement is worded. It's somewhere in this paperwork. Okay, I can't find it in here, but there is a current requirement for the amount of upland, basically, or like a maximum allowable amount for the proportion of wetland that a new lot can be composed of, but it's not currently contiguous. That requirement isn't
Okay.
contiguous. So they felt that requiring 1 acre of contiguous upland was restrictive. So, and again, so I'm speaking to Spencer, my husband, who's a environmental scientist and land use consultant, he was kind of saying like, you don't really need both. It's, you know, it seems like a little bit redundant, and they could potentially conflict, which was the other, concern of the planning board, was that it seemed a little bit conflicting, that then looking at, 1 acre of contiguous upland and putting that next to a requirement to include in the overlay district 100 feet beyond the wetland boundary. It's like, well, does that 1 acre of contiguous upland include the
Yeah.
100 foot? So again, from an ecological perspective, in terms of like retaining the functions and values of wetlands, I think the 100-foot expansion should be our priority.
Sure.
So that was the major change that we presented at this meeting, that we would no longer be proposing that. We also added some suggestions for the prohibited use section, which previously we had left kind of to be determined, but just including, again, so this would be within areas that are defined as wetlands, or, and 100 feet beyond those areas defined as wetlands, there would be some prohibited land uses. And so the most recent draft has things like salt storage sheds, use of fertilizer, bulk storage of chemicals, sand and gravel excavations, hazardous waste facilities, et cetera. So things you don't want happening in or near wetlands, basically. So, again, I think there were some minor hesitations, as, you know, is this being more or too restrictive? But, most of the members of the board felt that what we were suggesting wasn't outrageous, and that it was, you know, justified, and, there was good ecological reason for it. And so it sounds like with another review of a finalized document that they'd be ready to hopefully move it forward to a public hearing in December.
How about the 100-foot buffer? I wonder if that got some,
So that's what they've been looking at is, again, we're falling short of calling it a buffer in the ordinance itself,
Yeah,
but that's
part of it.
basically what it is,
Mhm.
is including a 100-foot buffer around the wetlands in the district. And they all seem fine with that. Because we already have a 100-foot setback for buildings in Deerfield, so this is just adding a few more things that should potentially
Oh.
not be done within the
just an
vicinity of a
extension of
wetland.
what we're doing.
Yeah. And that's exactly, it was nice at this recent meeting, they really came around to seeing it as a clarification
Good.
of what their current outlook on the ordinance. You know, I think when they are currently reviewing site plans, when they're currently looking at, you know, potential lots, they're thinking about what would be
Mhm.
happening within the vicinity of a wetland, but they don't have a leg to stand on currently to say people can't do certain things.
This
So,
helps.
Yeah, so this helps clarify some of their thought process already, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, so hopefully, we'll get kind of a final version from them for Wednesday, and they will make a final decision, hopefully in the affirmative, and
Hope so.
we can then schedule a public hearing. So we have the public hearing at the plan, so that's part of a planning
It
board.
would be part of a planning board meeting, and I think December is gonna be crunched because of the holidays, but we didn't get a date from Sylvia on what date that would potentially be, but.
And it has to be yet this year.
She said it can continue into January, but I'm not certain if the public hearing I'm not sure. She said there's an option to continue into January. Apparently, there's an RSA that outlines the timeline it needs to happen in, and it's some time frame between December and January.
So we're trying to get this revised, language for the ordinance on the March ballot. That's basically what it is. So that's why we have this timeline. Okay, so, just looking through easements, was there anything else on that?
Nope, not from my end.
Okay, so on easements and land protection, Judy just, pulled out a clip from our March minutes around the Mathis project, because, Eric, you had a question about
Yeah,
the
the-
50-acre parcel. I don't know if you wanna read through this, or not, or Judy, if you wanna make a summary of it.
Dan Kern had proposed the possibility that the Mathis folks would donate the land to Bear Paw, and apparently that has happened, Eric?
Well, that's what I was told.
That's what.
Yeah.
And there is a deed, registered, at the county, so,
Oh, so okay, so it's been recorded, the deed has been recorded to Bear Paw?
well, I have a copy of the deed.
So the deed.
I think it was recorded.
It was in their newsletter, so I'm assuming it
And isn't
happened.
that,
If it was
Katrina
signed,
mentioned this
then
at our
it's
last meeting.
recorded anyway.
Yep. I think Katrina mentioned this at our last meeting as well.
I don't know that she actually talked about this, about
Yeah,
the
I-
purchase. I don't think so.
I don't think so, but I mean, the whole thing has been kind of a surprise.
Yeah, she
And,
did not, I guess that it's going to require, a new easement holder, in some respect.
Well, it is, they can't hold
They
it
can't
and
hold an
owning.
easement either,
Right.
so they would either own it without an easement,
Right.
which would not be appropriate, because
Mhm.
we are the executory interest holders of the
Right.
conservation easement, and we would have to enforce the easement.
So I think Katrina is working through kind of a backlog of things, and I assume
Yeah.
this is probably on her list, so.
And I think as
So
executory
Kyle
interest
donated
holders,
this to,
Hmm?
Kyle donated this land to
the-
Bear Brook?
No,
if the owner
oh, this is Mathis.
of the easement holder,
I'm
the
sorry.
executory interest holder could terminate the interest of the grantee in the property, in this case it would be Bear Paw. And, it says that, property recording and notice that is effective of the registry of deeds referring here to shall thereupon assume and thereafter have all interest, rights, responsibilities, duties granted and incumbent upon the grantee in this easement. The executory interest holders are assignable or transferable to any party qualified to become the grantee's assignee or transferee. So this stuff could get shuffled around.
Well, I assume there's gonna be some conversation and agreement about, and see if they can find somebody. I
Yeah.
mean, they only have, 5,000 for stewardship? Maybe that won't be enough for some of these land trusts.
I guess the question is, I mean, do people feel that there's something that we need to do about this at the moment, or is it in Bear Paw's hands?
It seems
Well, I
like,
think we should let them know we wanna be party to this,
From being an executory interest holder, you have to be.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's in the deed. Does it say,
No,
it should,
in our deed, we're the executory, and
We
in
are.
the deed to the Mathis Conservation easement.
right. Does it say anything about,
Fairfield is the executory interest holder.
right, and what if it has to go to another organization, because,
Well, the only thing that what I had read here, and this was Jim Raymond's letter back in,
Mhm.
I just kinda hung on to this, because he gives a very good explanation, thorough.
good, we should hold on to
Of
those.
executory interest, holding an executory interest as opposed to holding the easement yourself. This is back from 2005, so, but what they gave was the Rosenfield Mallet, easement,
Mm-hmm,
where he actually gave an example of that, and in that one, it says that the executory interest is assignable. So I don't know if it is in
Mhm.
the Mathis deed or not, but that would be I
Yeah,
think
well,
that would be legal questions for.
Could you, when you contact Katrina about other things that you're gonna contact her about, just ask her about this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I didn't wanna do anything about that this time around, because I wasn't sure how you all felt about my pushing ahead on something like that.
How about if we,
without Conversation.
give Judy the authorization to
Absolutely.
check with Katrina on this?
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I probably will be, I did, send her an email asking her if she had anything to add as far as the projects are concerned, and she thought that we were asking her to be here tonight, she couldn't make it, but I told her that was fine. She said that, regarding the Pendleton, that, I had asked, or I'd sent her a summary of the minutes of last month that outlined her visit. And one of the things that she had said was that, she thought that the last survey, the most recent survey of the Pendleton, the 128 acres, was completed in the 90s, and I mentioned that Al Yeager and and will try, had gone through and found the boundaries. And so she contacted, and she said she was going to, and then she did say
She
that
actually went out with Bill and Alan walked the property with them a week ago.
Okay.
And she says the boundaries are very well marked.
Okay. That pretty much sums up what she had to offer for this meeting.
I guess just taking a step back to the North Road Matthews project, I would just say that that situation kind of emphasizes my, and I think all of our sentiments to Katrina at the last meeting when she, asked how we'd like to be involved, that it would be good if we could be more involved with those discussions up front, like what the landowner's intentions are ultimately, because I think now we've ended up with a situation where, which I think it could have played out the same in theory from the beginning, but there's a different outcome than what we expected at the forefront. And so it would have been good to know that, because it happened pretty quickly that that landowner donated that land to Bear Paw, and perhaps there could have been some agreement where we split the easement fees or something between Bear Paw and Deerfield, like, because they clearly now have a pretty strong interest in the property. So I just think, like, for good use of our conservation dollars, it would be helpful to have those conversations up front so that we know what, at least the near-term plans for the properties are that Bear Paw's proposing to us as projects.
That's very good, and actually, I'd like to say, it used to be the way we're talking about having
Yeah.
it come back to.
And I think it will be. Katrina is
Mhm.
excellent, and she
Sure.
seems really open, so, but I'll just read, that situation just emphasizes that to me, that, it just would have been, and maybe they didn't know, but it would have been good to have those, be a part of those conversations up front. And again, it could have played out exactly the same, but, we would have at least had that knowledge going into it.
Well, I think there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the conversation, that whenever they're connecting with somebody in our town, we'd be involved from the beginning. And it doesn't mean we're gonna be arguing and trying to take the land away from anybody. It's just that we have the history here
Yeah.
and the
Well, and
knowledge.
especially if we're being asked to spend town dollars on
Absolutely.
the closings, then I think it makes sense that we be a part of the conversation in some way, so.
Well, connected to that, maybe you're asking about other things to talk about at some point. Is this the first easement we've had where the land was given away to, I don't know, but I'm just wondering, looking at the cost and so on, do we have to do, when that happens, is there something, we just gonna accept it the way it is, or is there something else that we should be thinking about in terms of all the money spent and it's gone, but it's
Well,
protected?
Yeah, again, yeah, I think the ultimate goal was
The ultimate is to
achieved, right?
protect it,
Is the land
right.
is in conservation forever, in perpetuity. And, I know that land trusts in particular have issues and towns have issues when conservation land is sold,
Mhm.
because there's often some communication lost from landowner to landowner. In this case, I think we're in a
Sure.
good, Nancy could have sold this land privately as well.
Sure.
And we could have ended up with another private landowner. Ending up with Bear Paw as the landowner, like, they know what they're doing. So I think it's a pretty good, decent situation, but, yeah.
Well, I mean, just the conversation would be just to examine this,
Yeah.
this new type of, transfer, and how, does it affect us in any way, or do we want to be doing anything different? I'm not suggesting anything, just that it's a new way, new step in the road. So I know Bear Paw has picked up a number of properties. In fact, some in Deerfield that we don't even have involvement in.
In Deerfield?
Yeah. Kelly property on South Road. There was a WRP property over there. I think it's down somewhere near the
Yeah.
Fred Dodge place.
Yeah. No, they,
They went directly to Bear Paw, or
I,
they gave it to Bear Paw, that was it.
After
They had a WRP with the federal government.
WRP?
Right, and what I'm told is they donated it to, maybe to Bear Paw. So,
Which section is that, where he's building
It's on
now, or
the-
behind
no.
what Dodge Farm used to be?
it's on the other side of the field.
it's across the road from the farm, Dodge Farm.
Not the
So
new
wh-
construction though, Wes. The greenhouse, that just put in a swimming pool this year.
Oh, jeez. Well, yeah,
Behind, like, is that, you mean like next door to you?
No, on the other side of the field. So like if you forget the new construction that's happening now, if I'm on this side of the field, it's the house directly on the other side of the field. That's under a WRP easement with NRCS, but I don't know that they transferred it ever. I thought NRCS still had the easement, but maybe.
Oh, no, and sorry, NRCS has the easement, I think they gave the property to
Oh.
Bear Paw.
Oh, interesting.
Kelly owned that property?
Yeah.
Built that house.
He built that house. I didn't know that, no.
Well, anyway, so
donated
things
the
are
easement.
changing, that's, I think we need to recognize that, and how does this affect us? Or is it business as usual? That's my point.
I think because we don't hold the easement, it doesn't probably influence us. If we held the easement, it might be a conversation,
Mhm.
but it's just the executory interest, I'm not sure.
Oh, you mean on the.
On this one in particular, yeah.
Yeah,
But as an executory interest holder, you have an obligation to enforce the easement.
Yes.
But there is no easement. As there is no real easement.
There is. It's still valid.
Yeah.
And of course, Bear Paw will enforce it because that's what they're in the business of doing, so
Yeah.
I'm not too
No.
concerned about it. but-
Yeah.
But we should for sure, just make sure that Katrina knows that it's a
Mhm,
potential
that's good.
issue that
Yeah.
needs to be resolved at some point. But I think of all the irons that she has in the fire that she's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to clean up, this probably doesn't rise to the top.
Right.
No?
So. Okay, so we're gonna skip these other projects because I think we got an update from the last time and there's nothing new to report there. So we'll just go to our minutes approval, so I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes for October 21st.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Eric, treasurer's report.
All right, let's start with a couple of invoices here, which will take care of the dues for next year. One is Bear Paw for $100, the other is the Lamprey River Watershed Association for $100. And so I would, let's do two votes. Okay, Bear Paw, $100.
Second it?
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And Lamprey River Watershed Association is also $100 for 2020 annual dues. Propose that.
I'll second. You
Wes,
second, whatever.
this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, out of the way,
Okay.
good. We had two, just so you know, I did process the payment request for the New Hampshire Association Conservation Commissions, which we approved last time. That was $325. And also, there was a correction we had to make. We had the Conservation Fund, there were two invoices for legal services paid out of the operating budget that should have gone to the Conservation Fund. And so they didn't, so we had to adjust. Conservation Fund paid back the operating fund, and that's gone. The Conservation Fund. That's for Judy, if you pass that down. This is for the month of October. And again, we have unofficial reports for, they're not official yet, August, September, and October Conservation Fund. I have not received any reports from the treasurer for these months. However, I do have access to the bank account, and that right now is a unofficial total for the the Conservation Fund. So the balance at the end of, well, at the beginning, 184,362.97, and the ending balance was 184,922.15. We received $520 in land use change tax during the month of October, and there was also interest of $39.18, which brings us to that ending balance. That is it for finance.
Thanks, Eric.
I'm
Huh.
waiting for it.
We deserve one every once in a while, right?
Great. In terms of updates, nothing on Turtle Crossing. I sent, in terms of Dallas Cave Town Forest replacement sign, I sent a photo that Brian took for Chris Carr. He had talked with me about whether that might be a suitable, project for, Boy Scout, and he was gonna pass the information on. I have not heard, so I can follow up with that, with him at some point. I think in terms of updates, that's really all there is to say. I'm still pushing Will to try and get in touch with Paula Dushano on the Prairie Dushano easement monitoring, and that will happen someday. Like I said, he and Frank just did the monitoring for the Pendleton easement, or excuse me, he and Al. So I think the Curry easement is kind of the, as always, the outstanding easement that needs to be done. So, that's all I have. Anything else?
I've got one more item on a financial nature. I'm going to the municipal budget committee tomorrow night to take the budget and hopefully get it approved. Select board approved it. So we'll see. I'll let you know.
Great.
Sure.
Thanks.
Did you say the NBC has approved the budget?
No, they are going to hear it from me tomorrow night.
Oh, so you,
And
okay.
I'm hoping that it will be approved.
Should be, that's usually not an issue, but I guess.
Well, you know, the small ones get the most attention sometimes.
Any questions?
No, like I said, I read through the notes in the previous couple meetings, so I guess it makes, some of the stuff makes sense. No, the, I'm trying to think.
Although this is making it seem like it's this short all the time.
Oh, no, I mean, I was there for the previous one with Eversource, they went on and
Yeah.
on about, you know, their
Yeah.
whole project, but,
We're usually here until 9, but
Yeah.
it's nice when we occasionally get a
Yeah.
short agenda.
oh, yeah, for sure.
And we would normally meet on the second Monday of the month, but we just met today because of the holiday last week. So
Yeah.
we would be back on schedule. So next week, or next month would be the 9th. Yeah. And hopefully we'll have some good news about the wetland
Oh, yeah.
ordinance and have at least an idea of when that public hearing will be.
Did you say that you were going to?
I'm gonna check with Sylvia and
Okay.
Fred to see if that's something that I should do.
Is Harriet Katie?
So unless there's anything else, I'm gonna close the meeting and we can,
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's one of our better meetings in terms of length.
Quite expedient.